I was standing there, motionless on the cold sidewalk in the early hours of dawn, holding a plastic bag with some hastily folded clothes, watching my own house being emptied as if I were a stranger. At 67 years old, after a lifetime of sacrifices, I was being expelled from the home I had helped build with my own hands. The metallic sound of the door closing behind me still echoed in my ears when I looked back and saw my youngest daughter, Bethany, watching from the window with a cold expression I had never seen before. In that moment, I understood that the little girl I had once held in my arms had become a stranger capable of pulling the ground out from under my feet without blinking. The cutting wind of dawn pierced through my thin sweater like frozen blades, but nothing hurt more than the certainty that I had been betrayed by those I loved most. The tears streaming down my face weren't just from the cold, they came from a pain so deep it seemed to tear my soul in half. How had I, Emily Thompson, a woman who had dedicated every breath of her existence to raising 2 daughters alone, reached this point of absolute humiliation? My thoughts flew back 30 years, when my world collapsed for the first time. Robert, my husband, had died in a traffic accident when Bethany was only 2 years old and Miranda was 8. I remember that morning perfectly. I was in the kitchen preparing coffee when the ambulance siren cut through the neighborhood silence. Something inside me tightened, as if an invisible hand had grabbed my heart. 15 minutes later, 2 police officers knocked on my door with somber expressions, and my life changed forever. That day, I chose not to surrender to despair. With 2 young daughters to raise and a house to maintain, there was no time for prolonged mourning. I sold my only jewelry, my wedding ring, and a pair of earrings that Robert had given me on our first anniversary to pay off the debts he had left behind. I refused 3 marriage proposals from decent men in the neighborhood because I wanted to dedicate myself entirely to the girls. During the years that followed, I worked as a seamstress during the day and as a cleaner at night, staying up until dawn to ensure that Miranda and Bethany had everything they needed. My hands, now wrinkled and marked by time, carry the scars of thousands of hours of work. Each callus tells a story of sacrifice. Each needle mark represents a sleepless night sewing party dresses to pay for the girls' private school. How many times did I deny myself a piece of cake so they could have new school supplies? How many meals did I eat with just bread and margarine so there could be meat on their table? Miranda, the eldest, was always my silent ally. She understood the sacrifices I made, and even as a child, helped around the house, took care of her younger sister when I needed to work late. Her brown eyes, so similar to her father's, always carried a premature maturity that sometimes broke my heart. She grew up too fast, taking on responsibilities that should have been mine. Bethany, on the other hand, was the girl of my golden dreams. She was born with a beauty that attracted attention wherever she went, and a charismatic personality that won everyone over. Perhaps that's why I protected her too much, sparing her from the hardships that Miranda and I faced together. I always wanted to give her the childhood that Miranda couldn't have completely. I bought her the most beautiful dresses, paid for dance classes, did everything to see her smile. When Bethany turned 15, I organized a party that cost 3 months of my salary. I sewed every detail of her turquoise blue dress, the same shade as her eyes. The party was a success, and seeing her radiant, surrounded by friends, dancing in the center of the hall, I felt that all my sacrifices were worth it. That night, she hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for everything, Mom. I love you so much." How could I have imagined that these words would become a bitter memory? The years passed, and the girls grew up. Miranda followed a more reserved path, graduated in education, and began working at a public school. She married young to a simple and honest young man, and they had a beautiful daughter, my granddaughter Sophie. For a while, our family seemed complete and harmonious. Bethany, on the other hand, always dreamed of a different life. She wanted to be a model, actress, anything that would put her in the spotlight. I spent my savings paying for acting classes and photo sessions for her portfolio. When she couldn't pursue an artistic career, she met an older man, financially successful, who promised to give her the luxury life she had always desired. That's when things began to change. Bethany started visiting less, always with excuses related to the new social life she was leading. When she came, she brought her boyfriend, Derek, an impeccably dressed man who talked about business and investments with an arrogance that bothered me. He had the habit of analyzing my house with appraiser's eyes, making comments about real estate potential and prime location that made me uncomfortable. The tension between Miranda and Bethany grew with each family gathering. Miranda didn't approve of the changes in her sister and made sure to make this clear. Bethany, in turn, began showing irritation with what she called her older sister's mediocre life. Sunday lunches, which had once been moments of joy and unity, became silent battlefields, full of hostile looks and acidic comments. The breaking point came at Christmas. Miranda had prepared a simple but loving gift for Bethany, a photo album with childhood memories. Bethany received it with contempt, commenting that these things from the past didn't interest her anymore and that she was building a new story. Miranda exploded, shouting that her sister had become an unrecognizable and selfish person. The argument escalated until Bethany said the words that echo in my mind to this day. "You live trapped in this small and mediocre life. I deserve more than this." That night, Miranda left the house in tears and never came back. I tried to mediate reconciliation for months, but both were too stubborn to give in. Slowly, my family disintegrated, and I found myself divided between two daughters who could no longer be in the same room. It was during this vulnerable period that Bethany appeared with a proposal that at the time seemed like a gesture of filial care. She said she wanted to help me with the bureaucracy of the house, that it was too complicated for a person my age to deal with bills, taxes, and documentation. She suggested that I sign a power of attorney to facilitate payments and handle legal matters in my name. "It's just to help you, Mom. Imagine if you get sick and can't resolve anything. This way it's easier for everyone," she argued with that sweet smile I had known since she was a baby. Derek agreed enthusiastically, talking about the importance of organizing life and how they could advise me better on financial matters. I, who had always been an independent woman, hesitated. Something inside me screamed that this wasn't right, but a mother's love spoke louder. Bethany was my daughter, the girl I had raised with so much care. How could I distrust her? I signed the papers without reading them properly, blindly trusting the one I believed would be my lifelong companion. If you're following this story and it's touching your heart, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories like this one. Your presence here means a lot to me. In the months that followed, I noticed some subtle changes. Bethany began appearing at home more frequently, always accompanied by Derek, who now behaved as if he owned the place. They measured rooms, commented on necessary renovations, and made plans that didn't include me. When I questioned them, Bethany said she was just taking care of the family's assets and that I didn't need to worry about anything. One afternoon, I found Derek photographing every room in the house with his cell phone. When I asked why, he said it was for security documentation. Bethany confirmed the story, and I naively believed it. How could I have imagined that I was being mapped in my own house? The final blow came brutally and unexpectedly. On an ordinary Thursday, Bethany arrived accompanied by 3 men I didn't know. She told me, with a coldness that froze my blood, that the house was now in her name and that she and Derek needed the space to start their life together properly. The men began packing my furniture, my belongings, my entire history. When I tried to protest, Bethany showed me documents proving the property transfer. My signature was there, on the power of attorney papers I had signed trusting her. She had used my trust to steal my own house. I felt as if the ground had opened beneath my feet, and I was falling into a bottomless abyss. "Mom, you don't need to worry about maintaining this big house anymore. We'll find a smaller place, more suitable for someone your age," she said while supervising the removal of my refrigerator, the wardrobe that Robert had made with his own hands, the wall clock that had marked every important moment in our family's life. I begged, cried, screamed. I explained that this house was everything I had, that it was the result of a lifetime of work and sacrifice. But Bethany seemed to have transformed into a completely different person. Her eyes, once full of love and gratitude, now looked at me with business-like coldness. Derek remained by her side, satisfied, as if he were watching a successful commercial transaction. "You'll adapt, Mom. It's just a matter of time," were her last words before handing me the bag with some clothes and leading me to the door. The door of my own house closed in my face, and I found myself outside, stripped of everything I had built. I spent that terrible night sitting on the sidewalk, watching the lit windows of the house where I could no longer enter. Some female neighbors approached, offering blankets and hot coffee, but the embarrassment was evident on their faces. How could I explain that a mother had been expelled from home by her own daughter? How could such cruelty make sense? During the slow hours of that dawn, I reflected on every moment of my relationship with Bethany. Where had I gone wrong? How had the little girl I used to rock in my arms singing lullabies become capable of such contempt? Perhaps I had protected her too much, sparing her from the responsibilities that had strengthened Miranda. Perhaps my excessive love had created a monster of selfishness that I failed to recognize. When the sun rose, painting the sky in golden tones that contrasted with the coldness of my heart, a familiar figure appeared at the corner. Miranda was walking toward me with quick steps and a worried expression. Mrs. Patterson, our longtime neighbor, had called her to tell her what had happened. Miranda stopped in front of me, and her eyes filled with tears when she saw me in that situation. "Forgive me, Mom. Forgive me for not being here when you needed me most," were her first words as she knelt beside me and hugged me tightly. In that embrace, I felt some of the human warmth I had lost in the coldness of betrayal. She took me to her house, a small but cozy apartment she shared with her husband and daughter. During the days that followed, Miranda became my shield and defender. While I tried to process the magnitude of what had happened, she investigated the legal aspects of the situation, determined to reverse the injustice. It was Miranda who discovered the extent of the manipulation. Bethany had not only used the power of attorney to transfer the house, she had also moved my savings, liquidated a life insurance policy that Robert had left, and even sold some pieces of furniture with sentimental value. Everything had been meticulously planned, probably with Derek's guidance, who turned out to have a history of similar scams against elderly people. The most painful discovery came when Miranda found old conversations between Bethany and Derek on a phone she had forgotten at the house. The messages revealed that the plan to dispossess me had been orchestrated for more than a year. They discussed strategies to convince me to sign documents, analyzed the value of the house, and even mocked my naivety and excessive trust. Reading those messages was like receiving a stab in the chest. The words written by the daughter I had raised with so much love were loaded with contempt and lack of consideration. She referred to me as an obstacle that needed to be removed so she could have the life she deserved. Derek encouraged her, calling me old and suggesting ways to pressure me psychologically. That's when something inside me awakened. The woman who had faced widowhood at 37, who had worked 2 jobs to raise her daughters, who had overcome countless difficulties with dignity and strength, was still alive within me. The pain of betrayal began to transform into an iron determination to seek justice. Miranda connected me with an NGO that defended the rights of the elderly, where I met Dr. Helen, an experienced lawyer who had seen cases similar to mine. She explained to me that what Bethany had done constituted fraud and abuse against the elderly, punishable by imprisonment. More importantly, she told me there were legal ways to reverse the situation and recover my assets. Mrs. Thompson, you were the victim of a premeditated crime. Your daughter took advantage of the family trust relationship to commit an elaborate scam. Don't let guilt or maternal love prevent you from seeking justice, were Dr. Helen's words that echoed in my mind like an alarm clock. During the weeks that followed, I immersed myself in a process of personal and legal reconstruction. With Miranda's help, we organized all the evidence of the fraud, documents proving my original ownership of the house, records of suspicious financial transfers, the conversations found on Bethany's phone, and testimonies from neighbors who had witnessed both my dedication to the family and the coldness with which I was treated on the day of expulsion. The case reached local media when an investigative journalist became interested in the story. The report showed the brutal contrast between the luxury life Bethany was now leading, posting photos at expensive restaurants and exotic trips on social media, and the vulnerable situation she had left me in. The impact was immediate and devastating for her. The hashtag Justice for Mrs. Thompson went viral on social media, and thousands of people shared their own experiences of family abandonment and abuse against the elderly. The case became a national symbol of the fight for elderly rights, and I found myself at the center of a mobilization that exceeded my most optimistic expectations. Bethany tried to defend herself publicly, claiming she was just taking care of the family's interests and that I was a difficult person to deal with. But the evidence was irrefutable, and her version sounded false and rehearsed. Derek, realizing the situation had gotten out of control, tried to distance himself, but it was too late. He was also being investigated for similar crimes in other states. The trial was a spectacle of contrasting emotions. Seeing Bethany sitting in the defendant's dock, trying to appear vulnerable and repentant, caused me indescribable pain. She was still my daughter, the little girl who once ran into my arms when she had nightmares. But she was also the woman who had betrayed me in the cruelest possible way. When it was my turn to speak in court, I felt the weight of representing not only my own cause, but that of thousands of elderly people who suffer abuse in silence. My words came out laden with pain, but also with a dignity that adversity had polished within me. Your Honor, I am not here for revenge. I am here for justice. Not just for me, but for all the elderly who are discarded like old furniture by those who should love and protect them. My daughter didn't just steal my house, she stole my dignity, my security, and my sense of family belonging. But she couldn't steal my inner strength. The judge didn't hesitate to recognize the fraud and order the immediate restitution of all my assets. Bethany was sentenced to 3 years in prison with a semi-open regime, converted to community service, and Derek received a heavier sentence due to his criminal record. More important than the conviction was the legal recognition of the injustice I had suffered. I returned to my house on an autumn afternoon, accompanied by Miranda, Sophie, and some neighbors who had become true friends during those difficult months. Stepping again on the ground that had been built with the sweat of my work and my late husband's was an indescribable experience. Every room carried memories that no betrayal could erase. The most surprising transformation, however, happened to me. The woman who had been expelled from home on that cold dawn was not the same one now reorganizing her belongings with renewed strength. Suffering had taught me lessons about my own resilience that I didn't know I possessed. I discovered that I am capable of rising from any fall, that my dignity doesn't depend on anyone's approval, not even my children's. In the months that followed, I transformed my experience into purpose. I began giving lectures at senior centers, warning about the risks of excessive dependence and blind trust. My story became an instrument of prevention and empowerment for people who found themselves in similar situations. Don't allow love to become a trap, I would tell attentive audiences. Loving our children doesn't mean accepting abuse. Caring for family cannot mean giving up our personal dignity. You have rights that no one can take away, not even those you love most. Each lecture was a personal and collective catharsis. Many women approached afterward, sharing their own stories of abandonment, financial manipulation, and family disrespect. I realized that my experience, however painful it had been, could serve as a light for other people lost in the darkness of family betrayal. The reconciliation with Bethany was a long and complex process. She sought me out 6 months after the trial, thin, with deep dark circles, and a humility I hadn't seen since her childhood. Derek had abandoned her as soon as the legal problems began, revealing the opportunistic nature of the relationship she had prioritized over family. "Mom, I got lost. I got completely lost and hurt the person who loved me most in the world," were her words between uncontrollable sobs. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'm in psychological treatment and doing everything to rebuild myself as a person." Seeing my daughter in that state of genuine vulnerability awakened in me the maternal instincts that resentment had temporarily suppressed. But this time, love came accompanied by clear and healthy boundaries. I would forgive her, yes, but our relationship would need to be rebuilt on completely different foundations. The reconciliation between the three of us, me, Miranda, and Bethany, happened on a spring Sunday, in my recovered house's kitchen. There were no dramatic speeches or grandiose promises, just 3 women who had learned, through pain and separation, the true value of authentic family bonds. Miranda, who had revealed herself to be my greatest fortress during the crisis, gained new respect for her silent strength and unwavering loyalty. Bethany, in turn, needed to regain not only my forgiveness, but also her own self-esteem, destroyed by the wrong choices she had made. Today, 2 years after that terrible dawn, I look back and see a journey of profound transformation. I am a different woman, stronger, wiser, and more aware of my own worth. The experience taught me that vulnerability is not synonymous with weakness, and that we can rise from any betrayal when we have clarity about our rights and our dignity. My house became a true home again, but now with much more solid foundations than before. Family conversations are more honest, boundaries are clearer, and love is more mature. Bethany is still in the process of personal reconstruction, working as a volunteer at the same NGO that helped me, trying to repair the harm she caused by helping other elderly people in similar situations. The most powerful lesson I extracted from this experience is that we should never allow love to become a trap that makes us vulnerable to abuse. Caring for family is important, but caring for ourselves is fundamental. Our dignity is non-negotiable, even when it comes to those we love most. For all the women who may be going through similar situations, I want to leave this message: you are stronger than you imagine. You deserve respect, care, and consideration, regardless of age or circumstances. Never allow anyone, not even your own children, to treat you as disposable or insignificant. Life taught me that we can rise from any fall, that we can transform our pain into purpose and our vulnerability into strength. We are silent warriors, capable of resisting the greatest storms and still finding the strength to flourish again. Today, when I sit on the porch of my recovered house, observing the garden I replanted with my own hands, I feel a peace that all the pain in the world couldn't destroy. I am Emily Thompson, 69 years old, survivor of a devastating family betrayal and living symbol that it's possible to rise from any adversity with dignity and grace. My story doesn't end with family reconciliation or conquered justice. It continues every day, in every lecture I give, in every woman I help recognize her own worth, in every smile I draw from audiences that came to me loaded with pain and disbelief. I discovered that our true strength doesn't reside in the ability to avoid falls, but in the determination to get up as many times as necessary. And when we rise with dignity, we become beacons of hope for others who are still lost in the darkness of their own betrayals and abandonments. This is my story. This is my victory. And if it touched your heart in any way, know that you also carry within yourself the same indomitable strength that allowed me to transform the greatest humiliation of my life into my greatest source of pride and purpose.